Welcome. Step into the lab. On this podcast, we will be discussing the practices, research, science, and technology surrounding alternative medicine, where listeners will gain valuable insight and information with every episode. Just as a reminder, the Mind or a Lab podcast is for educational and informational purposes solely. All subjects on this podcast should not be construed as medical or legal advice. You should always seek out help from a professional provider. Thank you. Hello, welcome back to the show. I am sitting here today with Michelle Bertrand, and you are listening to the Mind or a Lab podcast with Dorian Gutierrez. How are we doing today, Michelle?
We're doing great. Thank you so much. You can call me Shelly if you like. All my friends
Okay,
call me Shelly.
Shelly. So, Shelly and I met at MJ Biz Con in 2023. She was working at the booth with Level Minds CBD. Already spoke previously with Shiloh Bigles on the podcast. And Michelle was such a breath of fresh air. She was so inviting when I came up to speak with them about the product line, and basically from there on, we just kind of have been hitting it off over messaging on social media. So it's an awesome thing to connect with like-minded people.
Absolutely. I agree. Same here. It's been
So
exciting. Thanks.
since MJ BizCon, how has your view of the cannabis industry changed?
Since MJ Biz Con, my mindset has changed. Originally, coming into this whole arena, I was brand new to it, not totally ignorant about cannabis or anything like that, but brand
Mhm.
new to using it basically as a source of healing. And that was brand new to me, and to see it at such a big venue and see the potential that it has to help so many people as it
Mhm.
helped me was very exciting.
Yeah, it's definitely an eye opener to see a major conference centered around a plant that has been illegal for so long and still is illegal in most states. But also just to see the community and how big it's grown.
Yeah, I like seeing the shift in mindset around it.
Mm.
I like seeing that, and I hope that that continues because I know this is just the beginning. We still have a long way to go, but just to see the shift happening and being a part of that is really exciting.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dive into your backstory before we talk more about that.
Okay.
Where are you from, and where did you grow up?
Okay, well, I'm originally from New York. I was born in the Bronx.
Mm,
I was raised in Harlem. I'm I was born in 1970. So early on, I was pre-crack epidemic in New York, and that kind of my childhood really took a left turn when that happened. But that's where I grew up at. That's where I spent most of my time.
and being in the epicenter of all of that, what were you thinking about pursuing as a career when you were younger?
Oh, I wanted to be a doctor for sure.
Mm,
Science was my absolute favorite subject growing
mhm,
up in school. I loved it. That and English. English happened to be another favorite subject of mine, but science was over. I entered every science fair. It was just so interesting to me. And
mhm,
biology was my absolute favorite. As a young person, I was fascinated with the human body
mhm,
and what it was capable of doing. So, yeah, I had dreams of pursuing, I wanted to be a pediatrician,
mhm.
was my original plan.
Did you pursue, a degree in biology?
I did not.
Oh, you did not?
When I happened to get pregnant and have my oldest son right out of high school. So that took a trajectory that took
Mhm,
life down a different path.
mhm.
But I still always had a love of science and the human body.
Awesome. So, you know, from that trajectory, what did you think about doing, like, once your baby boy got of age? Like, what were you planning on? Or did you start making steps to get into health and fitness?
Not originally. Originally, I took a pretty well, I don't know how traditional this sounds, but at the time, since I did not go to college, I really just got a city job. They
Mhm,
took, you know, they have these tests that come out every year, and I took a city job, and in order to support myself and my son.
mhm,
Um, but through bearing children and having to lose weight, or doing what I felt was necessary for my own health at the time, is
mhm,
what led me into still a career while I'm helping people with their body, which was
mhm.
personal training. That's what I got into. Um, as far as helping people and help individuals take control of their body.
Amazing. So, with your personal training programs, what did you typically offer and who was your demographic?
I had a pretty I had a pretty wide demographic, to be honest
Mm,
with you, way back then. Because I got out of it for a little while, and I'll tell you all about that a little bit later. But
mhm,
initially, I trained kids. I worked for, it's no longer even open at this time, but I worked for Bally Total Fitness at the time when it was
okay,
still open.
okay.
And I just had a wide range of clients. I had kids, I had guys, I had older ladies. I had a
Mhm,
wide range, because I did have a unique ability, and I thank God for this because I think it's part of my character. I had the unique ability to talk to anybody.
mhm.
and,
Yeah.
and make a connection. So I had clients of all ages and all different types of backgrounds. So I didn't really focus on any one demographic.
Mhm.
But as people came into the gym and got memberships, I just had unique connections with people.
So, with that being said, what was your major focus? Was it nutrition or was it the fitness aspect?
It was most the fitness aspect. We
Mhm,
had a nutritionist that we could funnel our clients to help on the nutrition side.
mhm,
Mine was more nutritional guidance,
mhm,
as to what to stay away from.
mhm,
But we did have a program set up within our location where if people needed more in-depth information on nutrition, they would see our nutritionist. So my focus was predominantly on helping to build a healthy routine
mhm.
around exercise.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate, trainers and what they provide to keep people accountable and then also serve as role models to show people that it can be done. So, what drove you to get into personal training? Was it something that was inherent where you're like, I need to change my own life? Or was this something that triggered that response?
For me, it was more of once I went through the process myself
Mm-hmm.
of getting back into shape, because at that time when I had my kids, I just was one of those people that would gain a lot of weight
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy, and then had a lot of weight to get off after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I went through that process of for myself, I knew that I could connect and help other people on that same journey. And at the time, I have three boys, and at the time they were young. They
Mm-hmm.
were at the time, and I had a full time job in law enforcement at the time. Crazy enough,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
I had a full time job doing that, but it was taking too much time away from my kids.
Mm.
So when I thought about what I could do in replacement, I thought to myself, hey, I did a really good job getting in shape. Let me see if I can help others do that and make a career out of that, because I looked at the flexibility of
Mhm.
training. I looked at the ability to kind of make your own schedule. And I
Right.
knew that that would work for my family dynamic.
During your personal training journey with the clients that you helped, who was the most memorable that you helped out significantly?
I'll never forget one of my very first clients. She'll forgive me. Her name is Melissa. And
Mhm.
when I first connected with her, it was basically because we're talking back in the day, right? So it was basically a call list that we would
Mhm.
go down of new members. And we would call those new members to try to set up their initial first workout. And I'll
Mhm.
never forget, she avoided me. And I just did not, like, every time I would call her, she's like, I'll start next week, I promise. And then she wouldn't show up. And I think
Yeah.
she was waiting for me to give up. And I just refused. I still called her in, and one day after, she said, "You know what? I'm gonna come in," and she wound up being she one of the best clients I had. I helped her lose almost 100 pounds. Um,
It's
it
amazing.
took about 11 months, but once I got her in with me, she was so consistent, and I was able to help her do the work.
It's so important for just taking that first step. I mean, especially in a lifestyle change such as taking care of your health or your fitness level. And, sometimes we get caught up in this mindset that we're not going to make a difference with just one day, but it
Yeah,
only takes that one time that makes you feel fucking great. And
yeah.
then you decide to make that change. And I'm glad that you were persistent in making sure that your clients were being held accountable because it's something that they're signing up for, right? They're paying you money to make them healthier,
Yep.
or help them and guide them to be healthier rather. And yeah, it's important to have those good influences in people's lives because exercise is so important overall for health, and it doesn't have to be in the gym, it can be outside of the gym.
Absolutely. And it's, one of the things that I realized in working with clients, and it made me not want to be in the corporate gym as much because that's
Mm.
a little bit different. It's a little bit different structure.
Mhm.
Is it's an emotional decision. Taking
Yep.
that first step is a very emotional decision. And because of that, I was very intentional
Mhm.
staying within an emotional framework with my clients where
Yeah.
I always stay in tune with the emotion that they were feeling, because it doesn't matter. Sometimes, not in all corporate gyms, but in a lot of corporate gyms, it's more about the revenue.
Mhm.
And it's not so much about the emotional connection that you need to make in order for to help people have long-term success. And I was one of those trainers that, for me, because I
Mhm.
had been through the journey of being overweight and having to do the work to lose it,
Mhm.
it was always important for me to look past the revenue. I needed to look at the person, and I needed to look at their history and the emotion of why they weren't taking care of themselves in the first place before they got to me.
So, piggybacking off of that, what kind of mindset would you help strategize for your clients in order for them to have a frame of reference that this is going to benefit their life?
Um, what I try to now, especially, is I have a saying that I use with my clients. I used
Mhm.
it in the past, and it came back to me when I revived my coaching career.
Mhm.
And say to them, where your mind goes, your body follows. So it's always important for me to attack the real root issue, which is the mindset. It's not
Yes.
so much the exercise, but it's the mindset that I really need to address if I want them to have long term success. So I constantly remind them that where your mind goes, your body will follow. And
Mhm.
that in either a positive direction or a negative direction. So we have to be very careful in where our mindset is.
So during your fitness journey, were supplements a big part of it? And if so, what were you focused on and what were you recommending to your clients?
As a trainer at the time, I did not recommend supplements, supplementation of certain things. I would leave that to the nutritionist
Mhm.
who had a degree in that field. What
Mhm.
I did would share with them is the different things that I got from the nutritionist that helped me in my journey, which was an increase in protein, an increase in water, an increase in raw, clean food
Mhm.
versus processed um, convenience food.
Okay. So with that being said, when clients would come to you and they had excessive alcohol intake or a different substance abuse, what would you recommend to them? And like, how would you have that difficult conversation that this is stunting your growth overall?
It's funny that you bring that up because back years ago when I did do personal training
Hmm.
and before I took a huge step back from it, before you know, revitalizing that career now, but back then I did not put as much emphasis on it as I should have
Mm,
because at that same time I was consuming alcohol,
mm,
not realizing that that played a part in even what I was doing. In
yeah,
my mindset at the time, it was everything in moderation.
right.
Everything in moderation. Um,
Quotes.
but that was then.
Hmm.
That was a different part of my life. And although I was helping people,
Hmm.
um, and this is where we as coaches and trainers can, we walk that fine line, is that you have to realize that you have to take a look at what you're doing in comparison to what your clients are doing, and to have the integrity within yourself to say, you
Hmm.
know what, I'm not going to do that either. I can say thankfully that's the space that I'm in now. And
Yeah.
so now I have no problem having those hard conversations
Yeah.
because I've done the work on myself to alleviate that and eliminate that from my life. And so now it's easier for me to encourage them and have the conversation and say that I look at food and I look at what we intake now, and I say
Hmm.
to myself, I make a conscious choice. Is this going to help me towards my goal, or is it going to hurt me?
Mm,
And in taking that question and applying it to everything that went into my mouth, that's when
mhm.
I realized alcohol no longer played a role in my life.
So, was this when you decided to focus more on plant-based medicine? And if so, in the past, when was cannabis introduced to your life?
Oh, I can tell you that for me, the introduction to cannabis has been recent.
Mm,
And and when I say recent, I mean within the last 3 years. And it started with a awful, terrible, never want to go through it again panic attack.
okay.
And when I had that panic attack 3 years ago, I was 50 pounds heavier than I am now.
Mhm,
I was drinking. uncontrollably.
Mhm.
And I knew that my body had reached the capacity of what I was doing to it. I knew that when I had that panic attack, that was my body's way of saying I'm at capacity. And I knew that everything had to change after that. And that's when um, I found Shiloh. I reached out to Shiloh. We already had a business relationship
Mhm.
through the restaurant that I ran at the time, but that's when I reached out to her, and in my effort to help myself change everything.
So, what product did you use when you had that anxiety attack, and how did it help you?
Initially, it was her Primo. Her Primo 5 to 1 is the best. It's one of the best things that like really set me on a path
Mhm.
to help change what was going on internally, because like I said, with that panic attack and from my years of experience in health and fitness, I knew that that panic attack was a symptom of my nervous system being out of control, and I knew that I needed to get that back in alignment. And I, based on having conversations with her,
Mhm.
I was willing to try that versus going the pharmaceutical route, which I had tried before and it didn't help.
Yeah, and I think we do fall off the wagon sometimes with balance in our lifestyle,
Hmm.
and it does come to surface eventually, like
Yeah,
whether that be through weight gain, whether that be through hair loss, whether that be through insomnia. The stress accumulates in your body and it shows itself in a certain form. Unfortunately, we get to that breaking point and we have those days that are significant and then alter the course of our life. So I'm glad that you were able to research and reach out to someone who was already providing a product
absolutely.
that that is added to your rotation of things that you incorporate into your routine. So after that point, was it focused mainly on, sobering up, or, what changes did you make after this introduction?
Well, after the introduction, and this is, I was able to formulate an approach that
Mhm.
started basics,
Okay.
because at the time when I had that panic attack, I just knew that I had no discipline, I had no commitment to self, I
Mhm.
had routine. Um, I was extremely burnt out at the time,
Mhm.
so it's really crazy because even with all my past experience and success in the fitness world, at the time when I met Shiloh 3 years ago,
Mhm.
that was all gone. Like I couldn't string any consistency together to make something happen in a positive way.
Mhm.
And she convinced me to start with the basics, go all the way back to the beginning. The first thing I'll never forget, she asked me, "How are you sleeping?" That was the
Mhm.
first question she asked. And I was like, I'm not sleeping. And so that was the first thing that she helped me to address,
Mhm.
because, and like I said, she reminded me that lack of sleep is going to throw off every hormone in your body.
Yep.
Your nervous system is not going to get proper signals or anything if you're not sleeping properly. So that was the first thing that she helped me tackle.
Mhm.
Um, and getting that together, I was able to take the next step, which was like, okay, where do I start with exercise? One, as a former really successful personal trainer, I was out of weight. I mean, I was out of shape, I was overweight. The embarrassment and the shame that went with that internally
Mhm.
kept me wanting to go to the gym. I did
Mhm.
not want see anybody. I did not want to be out in front of anybody. And I always say it's a gift and a curse because at the time, COVID had shut down all the gyms.
Yep.
Um, Back when this happened. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to start walking. And I incorporated first I got sleep and then I started walking. I started
Mhm.
walking. That was the only thing I could commit to consistently. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go to the park a couple of times a week. I'm just going to go walk a couple of times a week. But it wound up being the best thing for me because it was able to help me one step at a time to build back that self confidence in a routine. So I tell my clients now, you start small but finish big.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So that's where the journey started. It started with sleep, then it started
Mhm.
with exercise. Once I was walking and exercising
Yeah.
consistently, then my brain started making better decisions where I could say, you know what? I've done all this walking. I don't want to eat those chips. I've made so much progress in this journey. I don't want to eat that cake. What can I substitute where I'm not sabotaging my goal?
Mhm.
Started to happen as I was able to finally start thinking through things properly.
And yeah, you need that executive decision making process to be under control when you
Exactly.
actually have good sleep, where you're getting the necessary amount of REM sleep for your brain function to come back to a state of normalcy. For that, just like you're saying, having hormone balance is so important in our lives, and also maintaining your circadian rhythm, just keeping yourself in that routine and being consistent with it, because any slight imbalance will could set you down the path of being inconsistent again. But if you already have the things in place that allow you to come back to center, that's the most important.
Absolutely. And that is what, that is what I kind of, that's what I needed to do for myself is I needed to have a default. I
Mm,
needed to have a default programming, and that's your daily routine. My daily routine is now my default program because life happens. You're going to get thrown curveballs all the time.
mhm.
But if you can create a daily routine as a fallback as your default, then you always are in a better position to get back on track.
Absolutely. So with your cannabis use, is it
Mhm.
primarily in a edible form, or is it in a smoking form? And to add additionally to that, sometimes we get the munchies when we use cannabis. Being a personal trainer, how do
Huh?
you mitigate that so that you don't go overboard and snack all day long?
Oh, that is a wonderful question. So my body prefers edibles.
Okay.
I'm not a big smoker because I do a ton of cardio. I love to run now. I just
Mhm.
finished the 5K. I'm about to sign up for a 10K and
Let's
then
go.
keep on going down the road. I'm looking forward to the women's marathon coming up in August. I'm contemplating committing to that, and that's a
Mhm.
full 26 miles. So my body prefers edibles
Mhm.
and prefers anything liquid soluble.
Okay.
So when I can add it in a drink and just sip, it's perfect for me.
Mhm.
Um, and as far as the munchies are concerned,
Mhm.
I keep a lot of healthy snacks. I keep a lot of healthy snacks. I'm a snacker. I really
Mm.
don't tend to overdo it, but I feel like with small snacks, it's easier for me. It's easy for me to eat it and put it away.
Mm.
If I have if I have too much in front of me, I just don't keep a ton in front of me and I just
Yeah.
have my basic go-tos.
What are your go-tos?
My organic pretzel chips
Mm.
And those are my favorite with hummus. Those are my
Mhm.
absolute favorite snack. I love granola and peanut butter.
Mhm.
So granola and peanut butter is one of my snacks that I love. I love just snacking on celery, carrots, cucumbers, and I keep a ton of that stuff around all the time.
Yeah, because there are times where we smoke too much or eat too many edibles, and then there's just all of this shit that's in front of you.
Right,
And the more shit that you accumulate inside of your pantry, the more you're
right,
gonna consume
right,
that. So
right,
that
right.
that's a it's a good tip to have a ton of different vegetables around, or just even fruits that
Absolutely.
can be consumed, but it has to be in front of you, around you, and you're just like, "Okay, this is what I have. This is what I'm going to snack on."
And
And
thing, I kind of stack my pantry and eating area just with snacks that my body can use.
Mhm,
So it's not. I just don't do processed convenience foods. I do things that I know my body is going to utilize
mhm.
um, healthy way.
So the next question that I wanna ask is, with the introduction to cannabis, being only 3 years ago,
Mhm.
how has that changed your life, and how do you notice the change in other people's lives working with Level Mind CBD?
Well, all I can tell you is that it actually saved my life, the
Mhm,
introduction. It saved me because I had no clear path on how to stop drinking alcohol. I had no
mhm,
path. I knew that I wanted to, but I had
mhm,
wanted to for a whole lot of years before that.
mhm.
But like I said, when you don't see a clear path, it just makes it easier to stay stuck.
Right.
Um, and you know, having the courage to go sit with Shiloh at Level Minds, and I know that there's a huge stigma around the cannabis world.
Mhm,
And I'm hoping to see that really diminish, especially among minority cultures.
mm,
Um, you know, I saw a big shift coming from New York, especially coming from New York up north. There was already a stigma, but when I moved down south and moved along the Bible Belt, I
mhm,
saw the stigma grow,
mm,
um, and I see an even wider gap. Whereas there are people my age and older who are
mhm,
suffering in silence, stuck in a situation because of the stigma attached to cannabis. And so, in seeing the progress that Shiloh and Nelson, Level Minds, and other companies like theirs that are really intent on supporting the wellness factor
mhm.
of plant based medicine, um, I just love it and it's exciting. And I love working there every day because I see so many of our customers that
Mhm.
come in and they're like, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad this was here as a resource, as another way to help.
That's great. And how did you, start working there? Like, what's the backstory on that?
It's funny because when I started my healing journey, I was still working at the restaurant that I was running at the time,
Yeah.
but taking a huge step back because of the stress, because of that panic attack.
Mhm,
I knew that I needed to make life changes of my own, and I'll
mhm.
never forget sitting down with my staff and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna take a big step back. I need you guys to run the day-to-day operations, and I'm going to
Yeah.
run back end. I'm going to keep, all of our vendor relationships afloat. I'm going to keep all the orders intact, but
Mhm.
I'm that from home so I can work on myself.
Okay.
So in doing that and in taking that big step back, like I said, when I started working with Shiloh, I got to the point in my healing journey where I knew that in order for me to move forward, I couldn't do that job anymore. It was just too stressful. It caused too much anxiety. There was too much uncertainty. And
Mhm.
I knew that it was not going to benefit my overall healing journey, which still had a long way to go.
Mhm.
I was still very new in it. So I needed to step away from that, which was terrifying in itself because I had never not worked. I had
Mm.
not had a job. And it was like, wait, what? You're going to do what?
Yeah.
But, that's where I really had to, I call that my first test of faith in the healed version of me, is that I literally had to talk to God and say, okay, what am I going to do? And he told me, share your story. He said, I need you can't share and help more people in their healing journey if you're
Mhm.
inside that place, if you're stuck there. And that's when I made the decision to step away. Like I said, that was all a very intentional part of the healing journey. Um,
Mhm.
and the one thing that I knew is that when I looked for another job,
Yeah.
that had to be something that supported my healing journey. And this is just how God works. At the time when I reached out to Shiloh, they needed help.
Mm.
And it was just the perfect segue for me to start a new job because it had been a year since I
Yeah.
resigned my other job. So it was the perfect way for me to re enter the workforce,
Mhm.
but still um, be able to have a tremendous positive influence and feel good about what I was doing.
Oh, love hearing that story because first off, you're using a product that's helping you. The owner has suggested tips to change your lifestyle, and you already see the level of benefit that is happening because of the advice given to you, and just like a quick reminder of, hey, I got to get back to focusing on health and me overall. And
Right,
then secondly, saying, hey, I want to come work for you, I believe in your product, do you need help? And them giving you welcoming arms. That's amazing. I think people taking the time to find the right work culture and environment fosters a level of growth that is undeniable,
ab-
and you can clearly see it with you because you do seem very happy to be what you're doing, and also promoting that this is something going that will inevitably benefit your life in some way. It doesn't have to necessarily be in a smokable form or edible form. Could be a topical form, and there are alternatives to getting out of the cycle that you might be in.
right, absolutely. And once I started working for Nelson at Level Minds, that just made me want to share more. It made me want to share more of the success of my healing journey because it reminded me that everything in our minds and bodies are about homeostasis and balance. Um,
Yes.
but we can forget that if we get into a vicious cycle
Mhm.
of burnout, a vicious cycle of stress. If we get into those negative cycles, we can forget that the body is meant to be balanced. The only way our minds and bodies work together is if there's balance.
Absolutely. So, with the community that y'all are creating in the South, how are you collectively breaking the stigma?
I think that. the biggest thing that we can do as human beings is be brave enough and vulnerable enough to share our stories, because that's what's going to have the biggest impact.
Mhm.
And in working with Level Minds and in relaunching my coaching career, being able to bridge the two together to help more people has
Mhm.
been just the icing on the cake. Because now I'm starting walking programs. I'm starting people off in very basic and simple ways, um, giving them gentle reminders. I'm not that trainer that's going to be like, rah, 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 I do this. I'm not. I'm a drill sergeant in my own kind of way.
Yeah.
And that way is in locking down the foundational piece and the
Mm,
basics of your routine, because you can grow it to as big as you want your whole routine to be, but it's
mm,
always going to require you to come back to the basics.
mm, mhm,
And that's what I teach people, through walking programs, through organizing and getting them to join in 5K races with me, where we can just get out there collectively, together and make ourselves proud. My philosophy and my approach as it comes to coaching now is do the small things unseen by the world to make yourself proud, because that's what's going to give you the longevity.
So, with your program that you're offering, are you suggesting these type of products to your clients?
Yeah, me and my clients talk all the time, especially during the intake process.
Mhm,
During the intake process, and I do a really, really deep lifestyle dive. During With my clients now, our very first session, and most people are a little taken back by it, but they really enjoy it. Our very first session is a 3 mile walk.
mhm,
And during that 3 mile walk, I'm addressing things that have nothing to do with exercise.
mhm,
I'm addressing what your sleep habits are like, what your family routine is like, what your support system looks like, what your work environment is like. I'm addressing things that will affect your mental health and the ability to stick to a program.
mhm,
And in those conversations, if they're having trouble with sleep, with stress, with anxiety, which all can be barriers to having a daily routine, a good daily routine. Those can be barriers. If they're telling me about those struggles, I share my story and then I offer recommendations of them to come in, sit with an expert. Let's see where you're at and how we can help.
amazing. So, I think you're the first personal trainer coach that I've spoken with that is offering some sort of guidance to first time users on how they can potentially use a plant-based medicine to integrate into their lifestyle to help them out with any ailments that they're dealing with. So that's pretty cool that you're starting off with that, especially in the South. I feel like all the West Coast, it's been integrated into it's like fucking breathing. But
Right.
I know the South is gonna take a little bit more time and a lot more education
Right.
to get people to feel comfortable at that level.
Yeah, because you have to. One of the things that made it easy for me to stay open minded is
Mhm,
in sitting down and speaking to Shiloh. It took away the fear.
mhm,
And really, what's holding most people back is fear. It's fear of the unknown. It's fear of something that they don't know about, something that
mhm,
they're familiar with. And all I can say to not just your viewers on your podcast is you have to be brave enough to do something different. Because if what you are doing is not working, you have to be honest with yourself and you have to be brave enough to do something different.
Mm, I love that. Yeah, yep. I mean, for the most part, I think that's what holds a lot of people back is fear, the fear of
Absolutely.
the unknown and stepping into trying something that they have no clue will or no clue of how it's going to benefit them or vice versa be detrimental in some sort of way because there are adverse effects that can happen and people's bodies don't respond to certain substances, certain compounds. So yeah, there has to be an educational factor to everything that the industry is doing. So that's very important. And I could see that when I came up to the booth, and that's who I was looking for. I was looking for the special cases at MJ Biz Con of, all right, who's here to sell me some shit, but who's here to teach me something?
Right, right. And that's the big allure for me in wanting to work with Level Minds currently and to watch the growth that I know is going to happen is that they were so big on education. And because I was able to get that, I was able to feel more comfortable in my decision to
Hmm.
try something to see if it works. Not everything works for everybody, but you have to start the process of learning somewhere. And they
Hmm.
very easy. They made it very simple. It wasn't complicated. And because I'm older, when I started this journey, I was 50. And so the whole, and especially coming from a time, I spent a good amount of time in law enforcement. So having that history, there was a big barrier there of what is this? Like, okay, I'm not smoking no weed. I'm not doing this. I'm not, there's this whole, like I said, this whole stigma that goes along with it that causes a great amount of fear.
Hmm.
That fear is what holds people back.
Yeah, and sharing your story about this, and then I know there are other people who are also in law enforcement that most likely use products now moving forward in this year because there are so many states online that it can be beneficial in some way, even if it's non-intoxicating. I think that's the most important part, and
Right.
a lot of research needs to be done on the minor cannabinoids and that's the other thing that I enjoyed about listening to Shiloh is that she incorporates the other minor cannabinoids into the products because they are very beneficial and you don't get high from them. You get other effects that can help you out with anxiety, stress, inflammation. So, with that in mind, what excites you about the future of cannabis?
What excites me about the future, and I'm glad that you spoke to that, especially with what Shiloh and Nelson are doing, is because for people who do have that cannabis fear, there
Hmm.
are other products that we have in our store that provide the same relief without the cannabis in it.
Hmm.
Because they've been able to identify the molecules that help to bind to the same receptors in the brain that give you relief from, the depression, from the anxiety, from the PTSD. Our mushroom product is one of my favorite products
Hmm.
that doesn't have any THC in it.
Hmm.
And it makes it really, really good for a professional who's looking for that same relief,
Mhm,
but cannot have that in their system. It's so that's what makes me so excited about the growth of the plant-based medicine as far
mhm,
as help people, because I believe still we've only scratched the surface of the plant-based medicines that can help us. Um, but it's good to see the growth.
yeah, for sure, and it's awesome speaking with people who are involved in all various aspects of the industry, and I intend on continuing to talk to everyone that's involved and make sure that their voice is heard. And ultimately, this is their platform. This is what I'm building for everyone that wants to tap into a taboo science and build a community around sharing knowledge and wisdom. Uh, so, the last question that I wanted to ask you, being a personal trainer, how important is mental health?
Oh, that's why I said very early on. It's so important because where your mind goes, your body will follow.
Mhm,
That's how important it is. So, mental health will play an aspect in everything your body does because your body is just reacting to what your mind is going through, what
mhm.
you're thinking. So that in itself tells you how important it is in order to function.
So with, you know, your situation when you were at your lowest point, what was your mentality then? And then how did you break out of that?
Um, my mentality then at that point, when I was in the lowest point 3 years ago,
Mhm,
was it is what it is. I was ready to submit to the imposter in me.
mhm,
I was ready to give in,
mhm,
and that came with that it is what it is mentality. Um, it fed into the negative lies that I had been telling myself that kept me stuck.
mhm,
That is what it is mentality is it was for me one of the worst mantras of this generation. Um,
mhm,
in this culture is it is what it is. No, it absolutely is not. It is what you decide to make it. It is what you decide. Life is what you decide. It's not a is what it is, you don't have to settle for that. And like I said, we don't often, and I just was in a speaking engagement last week, and I told my audience, we don't have the luxury of how God wakes us up when He's ready for you to make a change. Well, when He was ready, I didn't have a choice. It could have been something much worse than a panic attack
mhm.
that I would have had to recover from because at some point your body will reach capacity. And we don't know what that short circuit is going to be. And we hope can recover from it if it's something that, depending on what it is.
Mhm,
Um, But for me, when it was that panic attack, I didn't want to take any chances. I wanted to heed the warning right then and there because that was severe and I knew that I never wanted to go back to that. I knew I never wanted to have that happen again. But in waking up and realizing what I had done to myself, I knew I had to make the change. I knew I was going to have to figure this out. And the one thing that I want to say is we have to not give up on ourselves. We have to not fall into that it is what it is mentality. We have to fight that with everything in us.
Love that, and I hope everyone heard that. There's so many things in that statement. The level of apathy that people develop when they are in a rut that
Yes.
inevitably just keeps pulling them down. The the negative feelings of shame and just not wanting to be present, keeping you down. But ultimately, it's the accountability aspect. You can't blame the external world for the problems that you created for yourself. And developing that self-awareness is the most important aspect, I believe, honestly, in health. Having the ability to critically evaluate all points of your health, mental, body, spiritual. It's important to be hard on yourself, but not overly hard. You just have to have that balance where it's okay, I'm going to listen to this voice today. It's only going to be today because
Right.
I'm allowed to feel this way. I am human. I'm not a robot that is only designed to function at its optimal point. However, I am going to get back to a state of balance, and I have to fight against that voice that continues to tell me I'm not enough or this is this is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a firm believer that, well, I'm just going to speak for myself. At my lowest point, when the imposter in me was running the show, that's what kept me stuck, because there's such a level of expectation, there's such a level of achievement that we build up in our own mind
Mhm,
based on a false narrative that the imposter in us has built up.
mhm,
And that's what you feel you can't live up to. That's what you feel like you can never get from under that thumb, uh,
mhm,
because it has built up this tremendous achievement that is too big for you to even try to conquer. And it looks so big that most people won't even try. And that's the point that I was at. I was, instead of trying, I was like, man, that shit looks huge. Oh, like, in my mind, I'm going, I'm 50 years old.
Yeah.
In order for me to get back where I was, what I would have to do, man, just forget it. It is what it is. No,
Mhm.
no, no. You got to fight that with everything in you.
Yeah, yep. It's a daily battle, and it's okay if you lose a couple of times because you're gonna have a lot more W's in the future.
Exactly. You're going to have, it's all about, you said just a few minutes ago that a lot of times we're really, really hard on ourselves. And we do have to push ourselves. I tell my clients now, don't be hard on yourself, be intentional.
Mhm,
Be
mm,
intentional. Don't be hard on yourself, be intentional. Because if you're intentional and you slip up and you make a mistake, that's so much easier to deal with. And it's so much easier to get back on track because you know what your intention is. Don't be
mhm.
hard on yourself. Being hard on yourself causes negativity, self doubt, and the inability to move forward. So I tell my clients, be intentional. Be intentional. It's why we have to create a daily plan. It's why, it sounds crazy. It's why at 53 years old, 54 years old, I have a bedtime. I have a wake up time. I have a schedule that my body follows, and I incorporate other things around that schedule, because that default and that foundation is the beginning of everything.
So important. Thank you for sharing your story. With some fun questions now. So, what is your favorite food after consuming cannabis?
My snap peas. I probably have some real close to keep these snap peas with me all the time, but the snap peas are my favorite.
Snap
They're a
peas.
little baked snack. They're a little baked baby snap pea, and
Uh-huh.
that's my go-to.
That's your go-to.
Yep.
What are your favorite books?
I can tell you the one I'm reading right now is my
Mhm,
absolute favorite.
mhm.
It's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Okay.
Ah, some gems and some nuggets in that, because that's where I realized along this journey is
Mhm,
that we cannot deny the input and what it has done to our bodies, because we can lie to ourselves all we want to in our minds, but our body keeps the score. Your body will tell on itself when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, when you're not finding that balance. Your body will let you know. So, this is one of my favorite books.
It sounds like an awesome book. Have to
It
look
is.
into that. What is your favorite hobby?
Oh, exercise, walking. Absolutely. Second favorite hobby to do, I love writing. I do a lot of poetry.
Mhm,
That's a new hobby that I picked up in this healing process.
mhm,
It's something that I do to let my brain rest. And I recommend that besides having a physical thing that you like to do, I always recommend that my clients also have an activity that lets their brain rest,
mhm,
allows their brain to experience creativity
mhm.
and, and flow naturally. Because I think that that's a big part of not just the healing journey, but a big part of the healthy wellness world that you want to live in. Is you have to have a way to disconnect from the everyday and allow your brain to rest, reset, and be creative.
Love that. It's good advice. Next thing, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a niche business such as your coaching business?
I would say start with what you're truly passionate about. Look within yourself, look at your life, find what you're truly passionate about. Because once you do that, then you can, I mean, I have to overcome the technical parts, the computer parts, the IT parts,
Mhm,
but I love sharing, and I can share and create on this platform genuinely because I have a passion for what I'm talking about and what I'm speaking about and what I'm bringing to the world. So I think when it comes to figuring out and starting your niche, that
mhm,
you really have to start with a deep dive within so that you can
mm.
find what you're passionate about.
Very, very good advice. Michelle, thank you so much. Where can people find you if they're looking to look at your poetry or if they want to be coached?
Okay, well, I'm on all platforms. Poetic Fitness is the platform that I want you guys to follow. Poetic Fitness on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Um, I have a lot of fun on TikTok for a 53-year-old old lady. I have some fun. I do some things on there to encourage people. So look for Poetic Fitness on your social media platforms, and I'll be there to encourage you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is an amazing platform that, like you said, like minded individuals sharing ideas that's going to help not just the community, but help the world overall.
Strong send off. Thanks, Michelle.
All righty. See you soon.
See you.